Just to explain, this is hopefully it's not too long, but I've just done a recording just to explain all about Heriott-Watt, our history, the school's history, and then what we have to offer in terms of master's programs, and how that relates to the partnership with Inscape, and what that means.
Starting out as the Edinburgh School of Arts in 1821, delivering evening classes which gave access to education to working class people, which meant they could upskill in mechanics and engineering. Whilst in 1883, quite separately in the Scottish borders, an institute was created to teach weaving, dyeing and chemistry. Over the following century, the institute evolved from a technical college focused on textiles to offering a wider range of creative subjects. In the late 80s, the qualifications were accredited by Heriot-Watt University, and then in 1997, the institute became one of 5 schools at Heriot-Watt and was renamed the School of Textiles and Design. The school prides itself on its traditional roots, with a focus on the future and the role design has in the world. The school's current research themes are design for well-being and sustainable design, working with industry and other academic areas such as architecture and construction, robotics and healthcare to develop innovative ways to solve problems. The school is made up of 3 discipline areas: fashion and textiles, creative environments, and communication and design, with 11 programs, undergraduate and postgraduate, as well as research opportunities. And the school is represented at both the Scottish Borders campus and Heriot-Watt's Dubai campus, which will be celebrating its 20th anniversary later this year. The postgraduate programs offered at the Borders campus are fashion and textiles design, of which there is an option to include an industry placement, and fashion and textiles management. There is also a very well established program in interior architecture and design, and that is taught at both the Borders campus and the Dubai campus. We then have design management and digital design and innovation, with a focus on UX design. Design management is also available to study at our Dubai campus. Our Scottish Borders campus is made up of one academic building, a B-listed building called High Mill, with airy large studio spaces and a mix of traditional and modern facilities, including traditional wooden looms. The High Mill is just about to go through an exciting renovation to make the building even more of a collaborative hub, and this will be completed in 2026. In the unique setting of the beautiful Scottish Borders region, the campus offers the best of both worlds. Located in the town of Galashiel, surrounded by countryside, with Edinburgh, Scotland's capital city, just an hour away. The school has a long history in textiles and design and has evolved into a modern institute that prepares students for the design industries of the future. The blend of traditional and digital ensures students are well equipped to be leaders in business, manufacturing and design. There are 3 campuses in Scotland, and the Borders campus is located just an hour's drive south of the Edinburgh campus, which allows students to travel between the campuses on the free shuttle bus that runs twice a day. There is a on-campus accommodation, the Jean Muir Student Village, named after the British designer, which is made up of 3 buildings, just a 2-minute walk from the High Mill building. There's lots of green space to enjoy, including a patio outside the multi-use space called The Thread, and an allotment for students who want to get involved in growing their own vegetables. The Borders campus is conveniently located for access to Scottish luxury textiles companies. Students on the placement programme go on placement all over the UK. We are lucky to have locally alumni who open their doors to current students, such as Miss Vivian Lingerie and Sinclair Duncan. They share their knowledge and experience of growing a successful business. Students have said, "My placement experience was incredibly valuable in bridging the gap between academic learning and real-world application. It boosted my confidence, enhanced my creativity, and helped me build meaningful industry connections. It allowed me to gain practical skills, understand the intricacies of running a small fashion business, and appreciate the importance of sustainability in the fashion industry." Many of our alumni have found careers at local companies such as Barry Knitwear, which is owned by Chanel, designing and producing knitwear in the factory just 20 minutes down the road. Sinclair Duncan, a weave specialist, has their studio located in the town. Era Leather, who produce bespoke leather goods and have designed and supplied for TV and film, are just 10 minutes from the campus. We then have our Dubai campus, which opened in 2005. It was the first UK university to establish itself in the UAE. The campus is made up of an architecturally striking purpose-built building, and work is currently being carried out to renovate another building close by to allow for expansion. The futuristic campus is designed to offer interactive and collaborative learning experiences, with innovative classroom styles fostering group work and engagement. Located in the Dubai Knowledge Park, which sits adjacent to the Dubai Media City as well as the Dubai Internet City, the campus has excellent transport links such as the Dubai Metro and tramway. Dubai is one of the most sophisticated, futuristic, connected and cosmopolitan cities in the world. Its residents come from more than 180 different countries, with 105 different nationalities studying at our Dubai campus. The progression partnership between Heriott Watt and Inscape allows students who have successfully completed the BA Honours in Design at Inscape to then apply for one of the 5 design postgraduate masters programmes at Heriott Watt and receive a 10% tuition fee discount. It is quick and easy to apply. Applicants need to complete an online form and upload their Inscape transcript and award certificate, as well as proof of English language, which is a UK visa immigration requirement. If students have graduated from Inscape within the last 2 years, then a letter confirming that they were taught and assessed in English from Inscape will be accepted as an alternative to formal English test results. A portfolio submission is required for fashion and textiles design and interior architecture and design. There are 2 entry points each year, September and January. The tuition fees for academic year 2025-26 at the Borders campus is £19,816, but with the 10% partner scholarship discount, the fee reduces to £17,834. The Borders campus accommodation offers all utility bills included and access to organised events. Staying in the student accommodation means students are around their peers, socialising and collaborating ensures students have an enriched experience. Studying at either our Scottish Borders or Dubai campuses will be an experience you will not forget. It will help you transition into industry whilst obtaining a master's degree from an established UK institute. You will be surrounded by modern and traditional settings. We are a truly global institute and pride ourselves on being first in Scotland for graduate employability. This is thanks to our career-focused degrees and lifetime support from our careers team. For more information, please email lou@louise.dean@hw.ac.uk.
Okay, while I'm presenting, I won't be able to see the audience. So if there is any question, please raise your hand or type it in the box, and I'll try to answer it at the end. Peter, how much time do we have? Do we have 20 minutes, half an hour?
Yes, absolutely. I think
Okay.
30 minutes, no problem. Yeah, thank you, Theo.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'll keep an eye on the chat, and if there are questions, I'll let you know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a great honor to be present with you today to present my work. My name is Dr. Theo Dounas. I'm the Global Head of Discipline for Creative Environments at the School of Textiles and Design in Heriott-Watt University. And that essentially means that I am responsible for all programs that deal with space, in particular interior architecture, on the bachelor and on the master level on both the SBC and the global, and Dubai campuses. And at the same time, I'm also the Associate Executive Dean for International Partnerships. So, fostering relationships like the ones with your institution at South Africa. Today, I will be talking about blockchain for regenerative architecture, but also I will be presenting recent work on artificial intelligence in architectural design. This is all part of my research into this. While people expect that I'm only an academic, I'm also a registered architect, right? So I have designed real buildings, have constructed real buildings, and continue to do so. So part of what informs this research is also my experience into the actual architectural engineering and construction industry. For reference, 3 years ago, along with my very good colleague Davide Lombardi, we edited a book on blockchain for construction that deals essentially as the first volume that examines the impact of blockchain technologies, the technology behind cryptocurrencies, onto the construction industry. And here with construction, we mean essentially a very wide definition of the architecture, engineering and construction industry. The book is available obviously online, but if you also are having difficulty finding it, just contact me on ResearchGate and I'll give you a preprint copy. Now I'll start with kind of the first myth about architecture, right? And this starts with a Greek hero, Ulysses or Odysseus, who, when he returns from his 10-year travel after the Trojan War, is given a kind of a riddle by his wife, who does not recognize him, saying, well, you need to kind of, you've been gone for 10 years and you will have to take the bed and sleep outside, essentially. And to this, he responds that this is impossible because the bed is essentially embedded in the foundations of the room it is in, right? So Odysseus had carved the bed out of the material of an old olive tree on the roots of it, right? So the bed is literally planted onto the ground, and then he built the room and then the whole palace around that marital chamber, essentially. And kind of this is the initial idea about architecture as a design discipline, where you take a natural material and you transform it into an artificial one, right? This is the story of architecture, where we use the earth and the ground and everything that comes out of it to then transform it into an artificial environment. But I want to kind of make a distinction against this with a more collective way of working, and I will jump essentially from one very old civilization to another one. And I will talk about how Chinese scholars essentially see collaborative work. I referred this here to the book of Shanzhai, The Construction in Chinese, by the philosopher Byung-Chul Han, who talks about the jade seals, right? So within Chinese civilization, the jade seal that you see here is the person, and the person is the seal. So it acts as a signature, but also as an identity. So Byung-Chul Han describes how when an official is going away, there is a kind of festivity, a party with friends, and they all take this beautiful landscape inscription and they write their own messages, and then they stamp it with the seal made out of jade, and the resulting essentially artifact, if you will, is a result of their collective poems written to say farewell to a colleague and a friend. So from our point of view, we have here something that already is existing as an artificial artifact, and then by signing it, by transforming it, by putting the poetry into it, collectively this group of friends actually create something new. And from that point of view, this is where we potentially need to go in the discipline of design, where we no longer extract natural resources, right? We're not Odysseus kind of carving the bed out of a tree, but we take something that is already there and we kind of collectively transform it into something else. The other reference I'd like you to have is this book by the collective Space Caviar, discussing non-extractive architecture, right? So the idea that we can design environments without depleting natural materials, resources, and so on and so forth. It's a very fascinating book. It was presented at the Venice Biennale in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And my work about blockchain deals mostly with economy and governance. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with design, actually? But actually, a designer makes decisions all the time, and this is what governance is about. Just as a reminder, right, we are facing a very dire condition. While we need to house an ever-increasing global population, more so in the global south, the built environment, so buildings and construction, so anything that we design as an environment is responsible essentially for 39% of all carbon emissions. And this is related to energy expenditure, but also the energy that is related to producing the construction material. So part of the deal here is that we're trying to turn the architecture, engineering, and construction industry from a fragmented, unproductive, and adversarial industry in a much more coordinated, non-extractive, productive, and integrated industry. But what is blockchain? We keep on referring to that term. You probably have heard about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and the like. And essentially, blockchain is the network technology that enables cryptocurrencies to exist. It's essentially a decentralized computer network where all nodes have actually a copy of the ledger of transactions. And from that point of view, it is a very resilient network, but also a very decentralized one, as there is no coordinating authority that decides what is the source of truth. There is a sophisticated algorithm where miners decide, due to financial incentives, economic incentives, what is the truth in each transaction. Now, you might say, well, what does that have to do with design? Well, if you can do a ledger of cryptocurrencies, so addition and subtraction, right? I give you 1 Bitcoin, you give me 1 Bitcoin, which is, I give you 1 Bitcoin and I reduce my ledger by 1 Bitcoin. That's an addition and a subtraction. You can run mathematics on it. And if you can run mathematics, then you can run software, which basically means that you have a kind of global computer where you can run what we call smart contracts. And these are essentially software that executes automatically. Within my research, we mainly use the Ethereum blockchain, so not the Bitcoin one. You might have heard of Ethereum as well. We have developed a whole series of smart contracts that can do things for architecture in a whole range of projects. So smart contracts are software that executes on the Ethereum blockchain automatically. They are classes of code that run on what we call the Ethereum virtual machine. And from a programmatic perspective, you might think of them as a digital protocol that can digitally facilitate, verify, and enforce the performance of a contract, of an agreement, essentially, a credible transaction without intermediaries and third-party guarantees. So how do we use it, right? The easiest one I can explain is with tokens, and you might understand this if you have heard before about non-fungible tokens or for crypto, right? So on smart contracts, we can record the existence of unique digital IDs, like the medallion that you see here, or interchangeable digital entities, like the game token you see here, which you can use essentially to play a game and so on and so forth, or do other digital transactions like ordering a pizza, for example. Now, why are we using blockchain for AC, right? Why is it good? Essentially, what we are trying to do is develop essentially kind of backbone or a digital spine for the architectural, engineering, construction industry, where certain decisions can take place automatically by decentralizing essentially the decision-making approach. The theory behind it, I'm going a little bit fast because we don't have a lot of time, starts with Elinor Ostrom, the famous Nobel economist who described essentially what are the 8 principles for managing the commons, right? A lot of times humanity has developed the concept of a common good, but a lot of times also people who might have appropriated that common good have given rise to ideas like property or capitalism, essentially to make sure that certain parts are not depleted. So Elinor Ostrom described how communities could build rules, and these are the 8 rules, that would make managing the commons, anything that is a common good, sustainable and fit for the future. And essentially a blockchain is a common good, but also our position is that the architecture, engineering, and construction industry is a common good as well. So we are developing ideas that deal with taking designs and building incentives, whether these are social or socioeconomic incentives. We are sifting trust to the computer protocol, right? So you are excluding intermediaries. Imagine that you no longer need a bank or any other kind of central institution. And it is also decentralized, so you can participate immediately without any barrier. I'll just move on to the next slide. So the idea we're sharing here is our first prototype on BIM and blockchain. So how do you take software like building information modeling, such as ArchiCAD or Revit, and you connect it essentially with a blockchain ledger. And this was published in the International Journal of Architectural Computing. And we see here that we can create, various ways where designers can collaborate, where when they find a solution to one problem, the system notes the designer 2 contribution later on, and then it synchronizes through the blockchain. Later on, the designer kind of advances this. And in the end, the funds are shared between designers 2 and 3. So you have a collaborative kind of idea. Whereas now, within a competition that would run through a blockchain, you would only not share funds, but only have distinct points in time where people get paid. And from our understanding, we can kind of generalize this and go to a level where designers collaborate and at key points, at design inflection points. Design is an activity where you might end up finding what you were not looking for in the beginning, right? So you discover things. We can record this on a blockchain and as such share it with other designers and kind of build our collective ideas about innovative designs on that. We also were able to build on a very simple prototype, tokenized buildings, so put them on chain, where you take essentially every building component and you see kind of an abstraction on the top left where you have a space, and that space has 6 planar kind of definitions of 4 walls and a ceiling and a floor. And then 4 columns and 4 beams and so on and so forth. So you can take all of these components and create non-fungible tokens out of them. And if you can do that, then you can trade them or you can keep track of them in the circular economy. And we've built this prototype, but you also see now a kind of application of it, of how this can be developed. I'll skip a little bit the technical part, right? So this is how it works behind the scenes. I won't bore you with the Python and essentially just to make it on a very high level, anything that can run Python, we can essentially use. So you could use ArchiCAD, you could use Revit, you could use Rhino in our system. So it's very generic in that kind of idea. So I'll move on to a visual example, since we are designers and we need to kind of see how this works. So this is a competition we did with my office and the Architecture Decentralized Autonomous Organization, so an organization that runs on blockchain. And you can see the people involved in the project. And it was a bridge in Sofia, Bulgaria. It was a public competition, and the idea was that they needed, they had 2 parts of a park. You see the north part and the south park, and we needed to build that bridge that you see at the lower part. So we first started with an analysis of the north part of the park, which was kind of completely undesigned. So imagine public spaces that have been left to their own fate, essentially. And we wanted to kind of coordinate a path that would lead then to the bridge, over that road, essentially. Now, part of the deal is that this is located in the Balkans, where a lot of times it is very difficult to fund public projects. And again, a bridge of such kind and a park is a common good. And we thought that we could bring our technology into the digital backbone of this project and incorporate it into how the project is designed so that we make this more of a sustainable project long term. The analysis of the North Park created those nodes that you see on the left-hand side, which would act essentially as follies, as these kind of crazy pavilions which would celebrate different kinds of functions, from a bookshop to shading to a park bench and so on and so forth. And at the same time, the whole design would be assembled out of discrete elements, right? So we would look for a particular idea of assembly, of taking already existing building components and putting them onto the follies, but also on the bridge. I have to say that the whole project was designed digitally, right? So we worked with really simple tools, from vector drawings on Illustrator to Rhino and Grasshopper, and then kind of simulated the whole thing onto Inscape. The bridge is undulating above the public part of the North Park, and we also have the pavilions that you see on these circles. But the more important idea of the project is that we get essentially, you see the analysis on the right-hand side, and I'm going to zoom in, is that through crowdfunding, we can build essentially fungible tokens, which can then be used to fund the project. And then people can kind of adopt part of the bridge as a kind of public sponsor. And we can also tokenize the bridge itself. We can create non-fungible tokens out of the discrete parts of the design. And this is why also we selected particular design patterns that always have discrete elements, right? So for example, you don't have poured concrete in situ, right? So you don't have like things that will be created out of scratch, but we always use designs that enable discrete components. And many parts here you see possible flooring design patterns. And you also see assemblies of the main masts that would hold essentially the bridge together, but also the same kind of idea for the follies, right? We have a kind of skeleton, and then all of these parts assembled on top of it. And the good thing is that with this process, you could actually literally through blockchain own and sponsor part of the bridge and help the government essentially with additional funding through this idea. But also, with the smart contract that we would develop, if we had won the competition, the public could be invested much more directly in the management, the governance of the park and the bridge, but also its long-term maintenance. You see here certain visuals that we created, right? So the path we drew kind of starts from the center of the city and then materializes within the north part of the park. And also how we wanted this assembly idea of discrete elements to also manifest itself in the aesthetics and the visual assembly of this. And it also is very, let's say, compatible with what I would call a little bit of a Balkan aesthetic, right, where things kind of get jumbled up together, they get mixed, rather than have a clean aesthetic and a clean kind of idea. I'll switch tack now and go on to discuss artificial intelligence and particular diffusion models and graph machine learning. Let me skip this. And this is one of my PhD students, and what Eileen is examining is the use of diffusion models. So things like stable diffusion or DALI or Midjourney, essentially, in the design process. And these are essentially image generators to make them much more specific, that use the process of diffusion, right? So you take an image and you make it very, very blurry, essentially. And the artificial intelligence is trying to guess what should be, what each pixel should be until you get a clear picture. So in here, we did a couple of tests of how this could be used in architectural design. We gave the brief to a set of students, and they start with the textual interpretation, right? So they need to describe what they're going to design. This gets translated into text prompts. They get then inspiration images, and then we make what was the innovative part on this. We don't try to analyze this, but we try to immediately create a preliminary design. And this helped us kind of break down every time how this worked in terms of images and in terms of understanding what is the description that the designers are electing every time to create. The codes are there just to protect the identities of the students, right? So we see here how they kind of move on between interior design into a kindergarten, and then they kind of remix and then zoom out, or how every time they might end up in distinct, separate design processes. So we were trying to map essentially what is the journey that the students are taking into this. But also, how do they understand particular text descriptions, right? So, architecture flower or a kindergarten lab, wood furniture, cozy, right? How would you go on about describing things that potentially don't yet exist? And also, what are other things you might put together, right? So community center, modular near the sea, and then also then start to be more specific by saying, well, make it low, make it 2 stories, and so on and so forth. And then, again, distinguish the variants that you're able to produce. So through this kind of research, we were also able to make much more specific ideas that what people might think there's a textual interpretation and a visual interpretation actually works in a loop. So you're always working, again, between text and images to interpret those designs. Eileen also was able to classify what are the best possible AI techniques for architectural design, right? So she used a framework that looked at collaboration, design process, and level of input and output. And from this kind of ideas, he was able to really locate agent-based systems, transformer models, and graph machine learning as the kind of more promising ones for these kind of ideas. And just to translate for you, the transformer model is essentially the AI technology behind things like ChatGPT and diffusion models. It refers to the digital kind of architecture of these kind of ideas. But what does that have to do with what kind of visual ideas can we explain here, can we get here? And you'll see now experiments with also the students actually gave us permission for these images, and you see their names. And this is a kind of wellness and yoga retreat studio, and it actually started from the interior to go to the exterior. On the lower part, you see a very simple sketch that was done in Illustrator, and then how does that then translate into an entrance for a stadium? And you see this kind of deconstructed decomposition of the whole thing, but also how expressive the entrance to the studio is compared to the very simple sketch, very flat, that doesn't have any kind of depth. but actually when you look at it on the rendered image, you see the depth and the perspective of you as an interesting kind of idea. So our research essentially looks at how people could collaborate. Here you see a kind of diagram where people exchange information between a team of 4. You have a modeler, you have a generator, you have a sketcher, and a renderer. And we see essentially AI probably as being a distinct kind of role within this. And it might be used to generate images, generate ideas that you take forward, potentially with a critical eye. So don't just take it at face value. Or it can be used to sketch or render, essentially, depending on which part of the workflow you're in. But also you can use the mixed media workflow, right? You can generate physical models. So you can simulate this kind of scruffiness and early decision-making approach. So the images you see on the lower part are totally artificial, right? So they've been created with a diffusion model of having this very simple design for a school. And this allows you to be less precious about it, right? Exactly like a cardboard model will allow you to kind of cut and paste and work really dynamically with the space. But apart from this kind of work that takes place between teams and between your rough ideas and the idea that takes place on your design, you also can use it essentially to create really finely tuned images in the end of your final results. And you can see here design variations based on mood boards, essentially, right? So you start with the yellow and the blue color, but also a gray and a timber kind of texture. And you can kind of instill that within the design on a really, really, really nice and well-balanced kind of idea. So compared to where these things were 3 years ago, you can actually really guide it on a very good basis in terms of at least visual interpretation. I don't think diffusion models help in actually building the building. You need other skills for that. But at least I think we're on a good path. But also because of the way they are trained, you can also get happy accidents like this one, where you get essentially something that will never happen in reality, right? So on the right-hand side, the student starts with, dual images like this with dual perspectives, and puts a staircase in the middle and says, well, put a staircase there. And you get this kind of diverging perspective that would only happen if the floors are kind of separated, right? It would never happen on an easy kind of idea. And I'll jump onto graph machine learning and deal mostly with construction, right? So this is based on a long-term collaboration with my good colleague Vasim Jabi on using graph grammars and shape grammars for design. And this essentially means that we break down everything onto basic topologies. So you see here a traditional timber joint and how it's analyzed through a graph so that we can understand it. And this is now done through the work of my PhD student, Homan Yao, who takes traditional Chinese joints and analyzes them and then builds a system that can create new joints and new structures that you see on the lower part. This involves essentially a lot of understanding how the joint works, but also then coding on the level of analyzing it in an automatic kind of manner. I think my next slide is a bit convoluted, right? So I'll speed up a little bit. This is part of our latest work where we use a set of rules through shape grammars to kind of create variants of buildings. And you'll see one example here. So this is the Dom Narkomfin located in Moscow. It's a building was created 100 years ago, almost more than 100 years. And we analyze essentially, you start with 2 volumes and then you add vertical circulation, you add then horizontal circulation, and the graph kind of guides you through these processes essentially. And then you get the final design. So all of my work is driven from the point of view of making better decisions in design and connecting design with construction and with the actual final artifact in a much better case, more so when we're talking about collective understanding of architecture and infrastructure. And the actual goal in the end is to arrive at a regenerative practice, a practice of architecture where we are non-extractive, socially, economically, but also in terms of nature as well. And I'll pause here and happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you for the virtual clapping.
Thank you, Theo. Theo, would you take us back to the slide, please, where you looked at the kind of the text prompts and then how those texts, you were analyzing how different students use different text prompts and what results those ended up in. And talk to us a little bit about what you may have learned through this process and this research. I find this deeply interesting because I believe there's such a strong link between a designer being able to quickly describe what they have in mind and in the way in which we work in a studio setting. And I think that the better able you are to verbalize what it is that you are thinking, the faster your design process is. But I'm interested to hear what you found through this.
So it's a funny moment because it takes a little bit of time for the students to warm up, I would say, with this process, because a lot of times we train them to visualize through other means, right? So you need to visualize through sketches or through creating a set of models essentially, and the word and the text. So the textual description potentially comes after the artifact is there. So you have the model and then you kind of try to describe it, right? And I always make the case that, and in these processes, initially the students were baffled with the idea, okay, we have to describe it first. One of the things that we did is we started to say, let's do some warm-up exercises. So we said, think of things that are maybe impossible or out of the box, right? So can you make a building out of bubble gum, for example? Okay? What would that look like, right? Or take something that is completely out of context, like could you make a building that looks like a fish, right? Which, funnily enough, there are designers who would do that, right? But it's a very personal choice. It's a very intimate choice, right? But the diffusion model doesn't look at things like that, right? It will have a go whatever you give it, right? Potentially failing, which is also fine, right? And this is, I think, now the other thing about this process. With diffusion models in the design studio, failure is fantastic. It's a good case because we can use. I mean failure in quotation marks. I don't mean it on the level like you failed the studio or whatever. Because you have all of these happy accidents or all of these kind of moments where an error can be used as what I call a design inflection point, and you go, this looks interesting. I will go and investigate now this. I will take it and make it my own. So once the students are warmed up, let's say, and into it, you get a fantastic power in expressing this. And it does go on to that. You become better the better you are able to describe it. And some of the more inventive ones, we saw they started using an LLM. So they started putting ChatGPT on the other computer and going, I want to have a conversation with you about the design I'm doing on the other side. So they were going, can you give me more words? And we never told them to do that, right? We were like, you use the diffusion model. They were like, can I go and... Or they started opening like a thesaurus and saying, can I have a synonym for this word or an antonym for that? And then it becomes an exploration about language and how would we express this, right? And it also becomes, I think the important thing here is to record and be as much as possible what we always try to do in the design studio, to say, well, okay, you did this, but you need to be critical, right? So I think instead of actually losing that criticality, that thinking here, because it is a generation process that potentially it looks like a black box, you are very fast going, in the speed of I'm creating, but then I'm judging. I'm creating, I'm judging, I'm being critical. And then if you do that correctly and you don't take it, at face value, I think it's a really powerful tool. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also enjoyed there were some the renderings that you referred to that were completely AI generated, but using cardboard as the illustrative material.
Yeah.
I thought that was what I really like about this is that often I find that renderings in some ways can almost BS the client into believing that something's possible. Whereas this is actually very honest in that you, by selecting cardboard as the material, you are saying this is conceptual. And I think there's that's powerful and something to take note of for
Absolutely.
students.
And I think this idea of not trying to do your, you have to have the basics in the model and in the image, right? So you need to have the spaces and what you're trying to actually get out of. But exactly as you said, right, you are putting the non-important parts on the side, and you say, well, I don't want a precious, polished image that gives me the final result, right? But I want to understand what is this project about. And I think that's where it becomes really interesting, in the sense that you are no longer striving to present something, to get the job done, get the client to agree, but it's more of an exploration tool. And of course, you can also, going back to the bubblegum buildings, you can also try materials that potentially are cheap or would have been much more expensive to do in terms of time and so on and so forth. Now, I'm a very much a computer person, right? So probably you kind of all realize by my presentation. But I always try now to find ways where we can, you make a physical model, or you make a really, you take a piece of paper and you fold it and you kind of try to create spaces. And right now we have very, very good access to high technology, right? So you can take a photograph with it, and then that really simple photograph of a folded piece of cardboard can become essentially the core of your design project, or the core of your furniture, of a product, of anything, essentially.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, we see that with Frank Gehry in his studio, I think, with this very sort of the messy, the fuzzy front end, and they're very relaxed about using materials and living with the messiness of the process.
Exactly. The more you can be comfortable in that messiness, I think the more creative you are, rather than trying to always strive for ideas. And essentially, in the end, as most projects, right, time runs out, and then you kind of have to have the output. So
that is true. Theo, thank you so much. I see Michaela has just said thank you. That was very informative. I don't see any other questions in the chat.
That's fine. I think if you Google me, my email is online as well, and I will be very happy to come back and provide more lectures. Haven't been to South Africa yet, so if we do schedule a visit, I'll make sure I drop by, and then we can do maybe an even more involved workshop. And if any of the students, sorry, go on.
Please do. You'd be so welcome to visit our campuses. And I just want to mention that we have 5 campuses countrywide. So whether Cape Town, Stellenbosch, Durban, Midrand, or Pretoria, whether you're in any of those cities, you could pop in and meet with us.
Yep, perfect.
Super.
And a lot of times, the questions come later, right? So, the weekend is coming up. So if any questions come from the students, or if the students want to email me directly, please do so. And obviously, a lot of the things that I presented here are now introduced also into the MA that we're developing in Heriott-Watt. So happy to work with you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you all.
I see there's a question from Michaela, Lou. I'm not sure if that's something you would like to field.
Yeah, I was quickly typing away, but so basically my answer is yes, very likely.
Yes.
We would look at the portfolio. Theo's probably yes.
Yep.
We're very open and very flexible with our masters. It accepts people with various backgrounds, design backgrounds. But Theo, do you want to say any more about that?
The MA in Interior Architecture and Design is very flexible from my point of view. So you might be having an engineering background, or you might be having an architectural background or environmental design, because it's not a register. So part of the problem sometimes is if you have a professional program in architecture, they're very strict on what you can do. But with the MA in Interior Architecture and Design, we can take almost any design discipline if you have a good portfolio and an interest in this. So yeah, happy to discuss also on your portfolio as well. Most probably if you apply for the program, it will end up on my desk. So yeah.
I'm just going to put my email address in there because I know on the recording it was quite quick. If anybody wants to contact me at all about anything, about entry criteria, if they want to put me in contact with Theo or any other of academics, or just want to know about the campus at Dubai or our Scottish Borders campus as well.
I'll put mine as well.
Thank you both for providing your email addresses. That is very helpful. And yeah, I think students with questions, it'll be great if you can contact either Lou or Theo going forward. Minyong, any last words from your side?
I'll be sharing the recording on our YouTube channel as well, and then we'll be directing the students there so that they also have access to it. So Lou, if that's okay with you, I'll publish your email address just below it so that they have access to you. Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. That's great.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating, and we really appreciate your time and energy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Enjoy the weekend.
Thank
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers,